and we'll start. All right, I think we should get going. Um, welcome everybody. I'm so glad to see you all here. Welcome to the first speaker session of 2026 and with Latinas in STEM Foundation. So my name is Annabelle Forte. I'm the administrator for Latinas in STEM. And since 2013, our volunteer-run nonprofit, which was founded by Latina MIT alumni, we've been breaking down barriers for first generation Latinas in science, technology, engineering, and math. What we do is we provide vital role models, right, through our programming across the country, driven by our passionate network of professionals. We care about empowering the next generation. Tonight, we're very pleased to welcome Erica Hernandez to speak with us about managing anxiety because these are turbulent times for our communities. Erica is a licensed clinical social worker specializing in anxiety and trauma. She works closely with families undergoing the immigration process, providing immigration psychological evaluations that are utilized in immigration court to document the emotional impact of potential trauma, abuse, or hardship for immigration cases. Erica, thank you so much. Welcome. Thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be
Thank
here.
you. We appreciate it. So, tell me a little bit about your cultural background and how you think that has shaped what you do for your clients right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my both my parents are from Puerto Rico. So I grew up in a, Puerto Rican family, and very vibrant, right? Music, culture, everything. But one of the things I noticed within the community is the stigma around mental health. And I would speak to so many people, whether it was family, friends, and, people had experienced so much trauma, right? And that made me just so curious as to, why is there such a stigma around this mental health, right? And how can I help? How can I be a part of the change? And so I became so passionate about that. And I decided I was going to go to school to be a therapist and specialize and learn as much as I could in trauma, right? And really be a part of hopefully that change, right? And getting rid of that stigma around mental health within the Latino community.
That's great. And kudos to you for doing that because I totally agree with everything you just said. Um, what I think we're going to do for the next like 15, 20 minutes or so, please talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing with your patients, with the people that you're helping, maybe how we can manage our own anxiety. And for those of you watching, if you have any questions, go ahead and add them to the chat. We'll try to get to some of them during our Q&A. So take it away, Erica.
Perfect. I'm just going to share my screen with you all. Um, let's see. All right. Can you see it? You
Perfect.
can see it. Perfect. All right. So thank you again, guys, for having me here. I'm honored to be able to speak to you guys about managing anxiety in a time where we know there's so much stress, right? So many of us are feeling it. And so I hope that this can be helpful to you guys. Some key takeaways that I hope you can walk away with today is one, understanding the emotional impact that undocumented individuals are facing, right? And the unique challenges that they've already faced within their home country and now are continuing to encounter here in the United States, right? Especially now. That you can find tools to manage your own anxiety during this time of heightened fear and how we can provide emotional support to family, friends, people within our communities, right? The person maybe that you say hi to when you're walking your dog in the morning, but that we can be able to be that support to others. So I want to start off by talking about understanding the impact, right, that so many undocumented individuals are facing. And I want to share with you kind of a common scenario that I see in working with a lot of my clients while I'm doing the immigration psychological evaluations. And this isn't everyone's story, but it's very It's kind of what I see a lot of. And I'm going to share it with you in a way that I want you to try to picture yourself in that situation right now. And I know that's not easy, right? But to try to picture yourself in their shoes for a minute. So imagine that you were born in a country in Central America and you have lived there your whole life. Your family is there, your friends are there, everything you've ever known is there. And you have a family now of your own, you have kids, a spouse, and you've worked really hard. And now you've decided you're going to open a business, right? And you're going to sell clothes and just other needed stuff there. And you're excited about this business that you have. And one day someone walks into your store and they tell you that they are someone from a local gang, right? And they, in your country, gang violence is very prevalent, right? This is a very common thing. And they come in and they say to you, hey, you have to pay us X amount of money every month for us to protect you, and protect you from other gangs. But if you don't pay this money, we will harm you. We will harm you, your family. We know where your kids go to school. We know where your mom lives, right? And so we're going to come back at the end of the month, every month, and you have to pay this X amount of money. So imagine the fear that you have right now, right? Having experienced this, the trauma, the thought of, something happening to your kids, your mom, right? And so you have no other choice but, okay, I have to work. I have to work really hard and I have to make this happen. And it's coming to the end of the month and you've probably brought in enough money to put food on your table, but not enough to pay this amount of money that you have to pay. And so you can't call the police because there's a lot of corruption within, your community, and the police work with some of the gangs. You can't move to another, place because other places, other neighborhoods are dealing with the same thing. So you have to make this quick decision to sell what you can, get rid of everything, and find safety for your family. And so you decide you're going to sell a couple things, and just so that you can pay maybe a coyote to help you get to the United States. And within a couple days, you have decided to leave everything you own, everything you have behind, family, friends. You can't even tell a lot of people, right? And so you decide to make this journey to the United States with your children. And during that journey, it's not easy. You are walking through a desert for hours, hours at a time, limited water, limited food. You maybe you've had to stay somewhere where they tried to assault someone in your family. Maybe you've had to get into a car with 20, 30 other people where you feel like you can't breathe and they're transporting you from one place to the other. But all you keep thinking about is, I have to do this so we can get to the other side of safety. And then you finally get to the United States, and for the first time, you feel free. You feel like I'm safe, right? And you decide, okay, we're gonna make this work. You find an apartment, you get a job, your kids are going to school, they're learning English, you're getting acclimated, right? And life feels so much better. And then now you find yourself in a situation where you could potentially have to go back to your home country where you no longer have anything, where you fear for your life, right? You left, um, and you're scared for your family, right? And so this is so commonly, very often the story that I hear. And it's heartbreaking, right? Because what do you do in this situation, right? If so many of them have experienced trauma within, like I mentioned, within their home country, the journey here, and now they're like reliving this all over again, right? So I hope that this can give you kind of an understanding, if it's not something you're personally experiencing or know someone who's experienced, to kind of just understand what so many families are dealing with right now. And so if this is a part of your story or your family's story, or even you're hearing these stories in the news, right? It can feel so overwhelming. And so how do we manage our anxiety during this time? And I always say it's really important that we do stay informed, but there has to be a balance, right? We have to have that balance for ourselves. So it's important that we're staying informed. We know how to keep our families safe, right? Keep ourselves safe. But we have to limit exposure. And so that can be hard when we feel like it's everywhere, right? But if you do have to limit it and say, I can only watch this for 15, 20 minutes a day, and then I have to remove myself a little bit, that's okay, right? We have to do that because the anxiety right now is so high. when we have anxiety, anxiety is really our body going into fight or flight. And so essentially, adrenaline is just running through our bodies and pumping blood and everything to our muscles, which is something that we need if we are running from a big wave is coming and we need to run for safety, right? We need fight or flight. But consider that so many of us are sitting in that very often throughout the day, right? Like almost all day. And that's not healthy for us, right? So we need to be able to regulate our nervous system when we start to feel this. And so some of the things that I like to practice is something called mindfulness. And one of them is deep breathing, which may seem very basic, but when you are dealing with anxiety, the most important thing is to regulate your breathing before you do anything, right? And so when I do deep breathing, I like to count from 10 down to 1. So I'm counting backwards. And as I'm breathing in through my nose slowly, I'm counting 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and then out through my mouth, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so I do that over and over again until I can regulate my breathing. That will automatically bring down the anxiety within our body. The next thing I really like to use as well is something called imagery or guided imagery. So imagery is when you picture yourself, you can close your eyes and picture yourself in a place that's calm, relaxing. So for me, it might be the beach, right? So I would picture myself at the beach and really utilize all of your senses, right? What can I hear? What can I feel? What can I taste, right? So I can feel the sun beating on my skin. I can taste the salt water from the waves, right? Like really putting yourself there. With guided imagery, there's tons of videos that you can look at on YouTube, and a lot of people will use guided imagery at night so they can listen to it as they're trying to fall asleep if you're feeling a lot of anxiety right before bedtime. And then another one that I like to use, that this one is one that you can really use even if you're in a meeting or somewhere where you can't close your eyes, right? Or start deep breathing maybe. But it's called grounding exercise. And again, we're using our senses, and you're thinking of 5 things that you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste, right? And you can do this if you're, I can see my computer, I can see my pen, right? So you can actually do it with your eyes open and no one really noticing, but a way to ground ourselves if we start to feel that anxiety. The next thing that's really important is something called cognitive restructuring, right? Because when we're anxious, we're having a lot of negative thoughts, right? So I always say our thoughts will affect our feelings and our feelings will affect our behaviors, right? So if I am having negative thoughts, right? If I'm having anxious thoughts, I'm going to feel anxious. And if I feel anxious, my behavior is going to be anxious. So I might be jittery. I might not be able to sleep. I might not be able to eat, right? So we want to identify the thoughts that we have and really look at the things that we're in control of, right? Because especially in this specific situation where so many people are feeling out of control, right? Like they don't know what's going to happen next. This feels just so overwhelming, right? What can we control? What is in our control? And we want to reframe that negative thought. An example of that would be, let's say I was scared. I had a fear that someone was going to break into my house and harm my family, right? I would say, okay, my fear is that someone's going to break into my house, but what are the things I am in control of? I know that I lock the doors at night. I know that I have a Ring camera. I know I have a dog who will bark if someone's outside, right? All of the things that I can control, right? And then I would think of the things that I know to be true. For instance, maybe in my neighborhood, there hasn't been robberies in X amount of years, right? So what are the things I know, the things I am in control of, and how can I take those negative thoughts and reframe them? So these are really important things to use when managing anxiety. So we always want to start with regulating the nervous system first, right? So that's when we use those mindfulness techniques. And then we want to work on the restructuring of the thoughts. And then I think the other very important thing is how do we provide emotional support to others, right? Because maybe this is something that, where our family is worried about, right? Like maybe our mom is undocumented and she's worried, or a friend, or, people within your community, or maybe this is the work you do, right? Where you're working with people who are going through who are undocumented and going through this. So how can we be a support? I always say active listening. And what is active listening? Active listening is listening to someone without trying to solve the problem initially, right? Like really listening to them. And I always say one of the biggest things we can do with active listening that's helpful is sitting in the emotion with them. So an example of this is, for instance, when I think as humans, right, it's human nature that if we see someone we love who is hurting or worried about something, we want to fix it. We want to make them feel better, right? And so let's say I said to you, my mom passed away and I'm devastated that I wasn't there when she passed away and she called me the night before and I didn't answer my phone. Your instinct might be to say, yeah, but she wouldn't want you to feel this way. And you would have been there if you could, but you couldn't. And I know you shouldn't feel guilty that you didn't answer the phone. And all of that is true, right? But for someone going through that in that moment, they just want someone to understand or listen, right? To feel the emotion with them because everyone is saying these things to them to make them feel better, right? So I might say to someone, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine what that feels like and the guilt that you're feeling. That has to be so hard, right? So just sitting in that emotion with them, I think is really important. Another thing I think that we can do is checking in, right? Seeing how we can support people, right? I've talked to so many of my clients who will say like, we don't even leave the house. Like we go to work and then we come home and that's it. We are too scared to go anywhere. And so if you can support them in any way, maybe it's, running to the grocery store for them, helping them pick up their kids at school, whatever can be helpful to them, right? Asking them, what can I do to support you? I think is really important. And then sharing any resources. And one of the biggest ones is mental health support. As I mentioned before, we know in the Latino community, mental health, there is still a stigma around it, right? And so, talking to them about that, sharing any community resources that you know about, sharing your own experience with mental health if you feel comfortable doing so, right? To let them know they're not alone in seeking that kind of support. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do in providing emotional support to others is educating people, right? You are going to come across a lot of people who maybe don't understand this, right? That it doesn't impact them. They don't know anyone that it impacts. So it's very easy to have a opinion about it that, you know, right? Of like, oh, this doesn't affect me. I don't know anything about it, and that's fine, right? But I think one of the most powerful things we can do is educate someone. And so when you're discussing this topic with someone who maybe has a different view from you, I always say one of the best things I like to do, right? I try to do is recognize a shared value with a person. I think that's very important. So if someone said to me, if I'm talking to them about immigration and they said, we have to deport everyone who's undocumented because this is a safety concern for the United States. I'd probably say, hey, I can tell that you really care for the United States and the people of this country, right? You care for people. And I do too, right? I really care for people and what people are going through. And that's why I'm so passionate about that. So you see how I took something, a shared value of caring for people, right? And I'm able to utilize that to have that conversation. It's important to stay calm. And I know that that can be easier said than done when this is such a raw feeling right now, right? It's really hard. But staying calm is super important. And the last one is to use I statements. So nobody can deny your feeling, right? They can maybe not agree with it, but they can't deny what you feel. And even if you're not speaking to someone from a personal experience that you have with this, but even if it's, you're seeing something on TV or a story that you read, like, I feel so deeply for this woman who I heard her story and she's going through XYZ, right? I can't imagine what that would feel like, right? So I'm speaking from my own perspective of my own feeling, right? And so all of these tips and how to help, talk to someone with a different view may not feel like it works right when you're done talking to them, but I think it's about planting a seed of hope that we can have people see and understand something that maybe is outside of them, right? Something that they don't feel impacts them, but planting that seed of hope for caring and compassion to others. And so I hope that with these tips that they can be helpful to you guys, that you can walk away really understanding what so many families are dealing with, understanding how to help manage your own anxiety at this time, and then how you can really support others within your community.
That such great advice. I had to write it down. Recognize a shared value. And I
Yeah.
think I'm speaking for myself, but I think I may speak for some of those listening that, especially when we are children of immigrants that sacrificed so much, and then we got the opportunity to do so many things our parents couldn't. When we get into that bubble of the new world with our coworkers, with our friends, with our, college friends, our professors, whatever it is, it's so easy to realize that so many people don't get what we're feeling, especially if we're first generation. Um, we're in this limbo. We've got a door, to what's happening, and we've a foot to what's happening, and a foot in this other world of not understanding.
Yeah.
Um, for me, that's like a tough thing is managing those relationships with people who just have no clue uh,
Mhm.
with what's going on and how it makes me feel. Um, those of you who are on, please feel free to add any other questions to the chat or any comments. Tell me if I'm the only one who's
Mhm.
feeling that.
Well, I'd love to add to that. I
Yeah.
remember, being my family being from Puerto Rico, we don't have to deal with some of those struggles, right? And I didn't really understand it fully, right? Because it's not something that I saw from that perspective. And my husband came from Mexico and he was 3 years old. And I remember years ago, we were talking about immigration, and he said something to me that changed everything for me, kind of like opened my eyes in a different way. But he said, imagine how challenging it has to be for someone that they would leave everything they've ever known behind, right? They would risk their lives to come to a country of so much unknown. But just think about how hard it had to be. And I tell you that that has changed like opened my eyes in a way that I never thought it could. And I'm so thankful because, then I went into doing this work of doing the psychological evaluations for immigration cases.
Hmm. Definitely. I see that we got a question here. Having a hard time understanding how so many ICE and Customs and Border Patrol agents are Latino and seem so heartless. I mean, I sympathize with that, but it is a little strange as a Latino to see
Yeah,
Latinos in this role. Can
it
you talk
is.
to any? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it is very difficult, right? And I mean, I can't even speak to what may be going through their head or what might be going through their mind, but I think that goes back to what we talked about in educating people, right? And knowing that maybe we can't change how someone sees something, but planting that seed of hope, right? Like speaking openly, calmly with someone, because yeah, it's hard to understand how they're not seeing this, right? Or how it hasn't impacted them in any way that they've seen within their community. So.
Mhm. Please continue to put some questions there. We've got Erica for a few more minutes. Erica, we did have a couple of people who put
Yeah.
pre-questions in. Um,
Yeah.
we had a couple of college students that are also struggling with this. Um, do you have patients that are college students? Are you seeing this from their perspective as well, especially when they're maybe at home? They're the ones that help mom and dad with either language or, can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is weighing heavy on so many students, and I'm seeing that so many of them, a lot of the students I work with go off to college and they're in like this different world, right? And they're with their friends and then they go back home and there's this heaviness, right? It's a reminder of what's really going on in reality. And one of the things that I encourage them to do is seek support within the colleges. A lot of colleges have like counseling centers that
Mhm.
offer free services. Reach out to those counselors. I know there are some colleges that have support groups, reaching out to some of those support groups, right? And seeing how you can be an advocate within your community. I know college campuses are doing that as well. So definitely, plugging yourself in, but also finding the support that you need within, the counseling services that they offer.
I had another question I wrote down. A lot of our members and supporters are a little bit more on the younger side.
Mhm.
So I was wondering, are there any apps that you've come across or anything technology related that you have found has helped your patient, your clients?
Huh, that is a good question. I actually haven't really utilized any apps. But that's a good question and very, I think, important for like the younger
Okay.
generation, right? Because there is, so yeah, no, I have to look into that. That's really
Okay, no,
interesting.
that's fine. I just thought I'd mention it.
No, now that you say that, I'm like, that's important though.
We have another question. What are some ways to help break the stigma of seeking mental health? Anything that can be said to help? I recommend Calm. Oh, thank you, Carolina. Calm's a good app.
Yeah,
Um,
Calm. Yes, Calm is a good app. Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, breaking the stigma. I think if you have if you're comfortable, right? And you have used mental health services before, sharing that, right? Seeing, talking about how it's been great for you, talking about how there are people out there who want to help. I think another thing with stigma, especially for those who are undocumented, is a fear of like, what if I go to, seek mental health services and something's reported or it's not confidential, right? So providing that education around that, right? Like that services are always confidential. The only time that any confidentiality needs to be broken is if someone is in imminent harm. But outside of that, any services you seek are completely confidential. So, there might be some information they've heard that isn't true, isn't accurate. And so whatever, education around that you can provide, I think that makes a big difference.
Great. Lupita wanted to thank you for your time, and she wants to know, how do you deal with the moral injury of it all? Everything feels heavy all of the time with everything going on. That's a
Mhm.
great word, Lupita, heavy. I feel that. I know, my friends feel that. It is this heaviness in tu alma, like this heaviness.
Mhm.
How do you, what are some things other than the tips that we talked about that
Mhm.
you tell your clients to do or focus on or
Yeah. So one of the things I always say, and I know it's important for me, is to lean into my faith, right? And so if I have clients who have a specific faith that brings them comfort, right, and peace, really leaning into that, leaning into, I've had clients tell me they're joining churches and different communities that are doing support to the community, right? And that really helps them in that time. But yes, leaning into faith, leaning into family, friends, right? Like really trying to be present in those good moments because everything does feel really heavy. So when you do have those moments of joy, like remembering that even in moments of pain, we can still feel moments of joy, right? And really leaning into that when we are with the people that bring us joy.
great. I wanted to be mindful of your time because I really appreciate your sharing it with us. If anybody who's watching wants to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach out to us on our website. It's www.ehcounseling.org. Or you can also email us at info@ehcounseling.org.
ehcounseling.org.
Yep, EH Counseling.
Let me just check and see. All right, no more questions. So I think I'll just wrap up by saying thank you so much, Erica, because that was super helpful. We wanted to keep this kind of quick, but I know it's something that all of us are going through. I know I'm going to be implementing some of those techniques. Recognizing that shared value, like I really have to work on that. So thank you for your time tonight. And for those of you watching, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We will hopefully have more of these speaker sessions throughout the year. And you can visit us at any time at www.latinasinstem.com or email us at contact@latinasinstem.com with any suggestions for future speaker topics, which we are happy to accept. So I just want to thank everyone and just say buenas noches, Erica. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone stays in a positive mental place.
Thank you so much.
Good
Take
night,
care, everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.